Welcome, my friends, to our first lesson. Today we're going to talk about self-awareness. This is something that I very purposely started this course with because, again, as I said in the intro video, it's so important. Without self-awareness, not much else happens when we talk about the world of not only becoming better ourselves, but also leading others. We need to be able to pay attention to the right things and become a student of how we act, how we behave, what are our motivations. And so that's what we're going to explore in this first lecture. Self-awareness is a superpower. What's a superpower? Well, something that's incredibly powerful and also very rare. I find that many leaders and many people in general struggle with self-awareness. And I'm not the only one, because you've had some material to consume this week by Tasha Eurich that says the evidence and the research shows that we are all, including myself, sometimes failing at good self-awareness, even though we think we're pretty good at it. If we're going to talk about self-awareness, let's start with some kind of a definition. Self-awareness involves being aware of different aspects of the self, including traits, behaviors, and feelings. Essentially, it's a psychological state in which oneself becomes the focus of attention. So it's really this idea of looking inward and paying attention to, okay, why am I doing the things I'm doing? If I have, a lack of motivation, why is that happening? If I'm motivated today, why is that happening? Why do I behave in certain contexts the way I do? These are all kind of at the heart of what self-awareness is going to do for you. I always like to say, if I'm trying to sell something, and let's be honest, I'm trying to sell you an idea, I'd like to start with why you should care. So let's go there first. Why should you want to be more self-aware? Benefits of self-awareness include being more confident. This is a good thing, right? Self-confidence shows up in a lot of ways that, maybe contributes to well-being, more promotions, as we'll see in a second here, just a more success in life. You got to start with good self-confidence. Be more creative, especially as engineers. We like to think that maybe because we're left-brain thinkers that we're not creative. But you know what? You have it in there. You just haven't used it for a while. So self-awareness will help you develop that. You'll make better decisions. This is always a good thing, right? How many times do faulty decisions get us in trouble, not only in life, but in our careers? We're going to build stronger relationships. If I were to say leadership is about one word, that one word would be relationships. At the heart of leadership is not only relationships with others, but this course is about leading oneself. So it's about our relationship with ourselves. That's so important. And so building strong relationships is going to be important as we move forward. Communicate more effectively. These are the tools of leadership, right? The best leaders I've ever been around are the ones that communicate well. And so continue to try to develop that. And again, it's okay if you don't move into a formal position of leadership, you still should have good communication skills to advance to where you want to go in life. You're going to get more promotions, as I mentioned earlier. We're all, most people like that. I like that. And so if you like to move up in the company, you like promotions, and even just recognition, benefits, that's one of the benefits of self-awareness. And lastly, near and dear to my heart, it's going to make more effective leaders. Again, this course starts with leading oneself, but my hope is that you take that beyond and lead others at some point down the road. I'm going to propose or introduce you to two different concepts here. One is called SEL, or social emotional learning. This has been playing out, you see it a lot in grade schools now. Grade schools, junior highs, and I think even high schools. I do have a friend that works in this industry, and so SEL, and you can see this is the SEL Castle 5 is what it's called, and this is how they break that down. That's where I'm getting this information. It is in the back of the slide deck if you want to look into it more. But notice, self-awareness is this ability to not only understand our own emotions, thoughts and values, but to recognize how we have strengths and we have limitations, and how do we deal with that, right? Should I work on my strengths? Should I work on my limitations? Notice I'm not using the word weakness. I don't really like that word. And so how do I work best? That is at the heart of what self-awareness is all about. And I'm not going to read through this slide, but you can see some of the benefits. These are good things to have, right? Understanding your own emotions, we talked about that. Identifying personal and cultural assets, looking at prejudices and biases, We all have them. We'll talk much more about that as we move forward. Having a growth mindset. If you're not sure what that is, this is kind of that idea that I can figure this out. The opposite of that is a fixed mindset. And so a growth mindset is to be flexible, to say I can learn and I can grow. And so these are some of the benefits that we're going to get from having more self-awareness. So in your material, you've seen that Tasha Eurich, who has positioned herself as one of the experts in this field, has done some research, and she said, this is almost kind of funny. 95% of people think they're self-aware, when truly only about 10 to 15% truly are. And so that's maybe a little scary that there's such a disconnect right here. So that should get our attention, right? So if you are one of those people that goes, yeah, I'm one of the 95%, perhaps you're actually one of the 10 to 15%. And that's okay, because you're in the right place. We can do better at this. In her research, she found that asking why gets us in trouble. Asking why appeared to cause the participants to fixate on their own problems and place blame instead of moving forward in a healthy and productive way, okay? Let's take a look at another one, and you'll see a general theme here. When I ask why, sometimes I'll put myself in a victim mindset, all right, or a victim mentality. If you haven't heard that, that's kind of the idea of, you know, life's not fair, everything goes against me, why should I even try? That's a victim mindset. And here's the thing, even when you're well-versed in victim mindset, it's easy to slip into that, especially when we get tired. I do it sometimes. I need to practice good self-awareness and understand when I'm slipping into a victim mindset. Asking why kind of gets us to focus on our limitations. And if we ask what questions, we spin that to a positive and say, what is my potential? The why questions stir up negative emotions. What questions keep us curious? Why questions trap us in the past, and what questions point to a better future? So again, you can see the contrast between why and what we might do to change the way we do this. One of the things I want to bring to your attention, and I didn't see Tasha mention this in her research, but I would not be surprised if somewhere deep in there you're going to see this. What's going on here? Why is using why versus using what, why is that so different? In our minds, why is that different? Well, one of the things that's going to come to mind is psychological distancing. If you've never heard of this, it's this idea that I want to separate from my emotions, all right? When we get, especially when we have negative emotions that drag us down, we kind of Velcro onto those negative emotions, and a lot of times it'll put us in a downward spiral. Many of us know what that feeling is. In fact, I don't know anyone that can say I've never been in a downward spiral, right? We ruminate on those bad things and we just keep going around and around and down we go. We need to break free from that. And one of the ways we do that is we need to say, okay, I'm Velcroed onto this emotion and now I need to separate from that emotion. That's what we call psychological distancing. And so when I ask why, I'm Velcroing onto that emotion. When I ask what, I become the objective observer. Think of the advice that you would give somebody, a close friend, that was going through something that you struggle with, right? And if you were to give that advice, because you're going to give different advice to that friend than you would give to yourself. That makes sense, right? Why is that? Well, I'm not emotionally invested in this like that person is. And so I can be objective and I can have that distance from it, and I can give you better, healthier advice because I'm not attached to the emotion. So I want you to think about that. If we can get psychological distancing, we're much better equipped to make good decisions and, again, separate from that emotion. All right, so now hopefully I sold you on self-awareness is a good thing. We want to develop this, right? And we want to ask what, not why. Let's continue. How can we improve? What are some tools for your toolbox? Okay? The first thing I want to bring to your attention is what I call the elements of self-awareness. One of the first things you're going to see is reflection. And reflection is this idea, I mean, just like you would think. If I'm looking in the mirror and what's reflecting back to me, that's reflection. So this idea of kind of looking at myself, but taking it one step further is introspection. And so introspection is not only have I reflected on it, but now I'm going to analyze it. All right, that's where introspection comes into the equation. And then lastly, I'll throw in the third one. Metacognition is kind of this umbrella over both of those. Metacognition is thinking about your thinking. You cannot have self-awareness without metacognition. And so this is where we kind of dig into this idea of understanding, again, how we, or what we do, kind of analyze why we're performing the way we do. So again, these are three elements of self-awareness. They're all slightly different, but also very much related. So reflection, introspection, and metacognition. Practice these as tools in your toolbox. The other thing I would offer up, journaling in the third person. Marcus Aurelius was very famous for keeping a journal. It has now become a book called the Meditations. Marcus Aurelius, former Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, he kept a personal journal that somehow was published later after his death. And in his journal, he speaks to himself like he's giving coaching advice to himself. So again, this idea of third person writing, and this we found in psychology to be very effective. And again, we see the psychological distancing. If I can write in a journal, a reflective journal, in a sense that I'm giving advice to myself, so now I've separated from that emotion, this can be incredibly effective for developing your skills around self-awareness. Try it out. I do it every day. I journal every day, and I'm starting to transition to more third-person journaling to do exactly what I say, practice what I teach. Let me leave you with this, and then we'll wrap it up. More is not always better. And what I mean by that is self-awareness is a great thing. It's something that I think you should develop. It's something that I think you should habitualize. Now that I learned how to be self-aware, it is very much incorporated in everything I do. I'm always paying attention to to things that matter to me. And so I would encourage you to do the same. But here's the deal: too much self-awareness can be problematic. All right, we can overthink things. We can get paralysis by analysis, and even worse, we can get into this mode of self-loathing where we're trying to be perfect. And so this self-awareness becomes a way to beat ourselves up. And that is not a healthy place to be. And here's the deal. It's a little bit funny here, but having self-awareness, that you're having too much self-awareness. And I know it's very meta, but pay attention when it's becoming harmful. All right? Self-awareness, great thing up to a point, and then it can drop off and become harmful. So be aware of that. All right, let's wrap this up. Self-awareness, a little bit of a long video here because this is so important, and I really want to emphasize some strong points here. I want to know, what one thing are you going to do differently as you move forward because of the knowledge you have? Again, knowledge is not power. It's only potential power. See you in the next video.